Enforced disappearances remain a glaring reality across regions in the world. It is often used as a tool to suppress dissenting voices amongst repressive and non-repressive states, in countries in times of peace and in conflict situations. The act crosses boundaries of time and geography, and leaves families of victims in a state of suspended grief, with their pain spanning across their lifetime, and passed on to their next kin and generation. The United Nations Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances, in their report for the year 2012, states that there are 53,986 cases reported from around the world since the structure was formed. The UN Working Group reports that there are 42,889 cases in 84 states that are still under active consideration. However, these numbers reflect cases that are reported to the working group. The realities at the ground level are more dismal than the numbers reported.
My husband was arrested by the Royal Nepal Army 9 years ago, on May 27. At the time, he was running a small grocery and clothing store in Kathmandu. In the afternoon, I received a phone call from my sister-in-law. She told me that 3 soldiers had come and arrested my husband. My husband had no affiliation to any political parties. After coming to Kathmandu, I discovered that my husband was being held at the Corny barracks. Then my husband was moved to another barracks, and I heard no more news of him.
At that time I was 10 years old, and I was in my village. I was in my village with my mother at that time. We heard the news of my father disappeared. After the day, as 4th, he was disappeared, and we got that news on 5th.
I feel very bad. He is not around us. Please come home. I want to tell the people who arrested my father that please let all of the people, all of the team who were arrested under them to be free and to meet their family and their children, and to stay a happy life forever.
At that time, a Maoist activist was killed, and Goma, my wife, was suspected to have knowledge about it. On January 12, 2004, she was abducted by the army and disappeared. The allegation about her was certainly not true. The family is greatly affected, since the children lost their mother, and I have lost my wife. Their studies were also greatly affected when it happened. I seek help from human rights organizations and attend public hearings with the Maoist activists and ask them the whereabouts of my wife. At first, I was threatened by the Maoists and told me that like your wife, you will also be killed. I was not afraid of them and told them that if you want to kill me, then kill me, just do it in front of the public. I have tried filing cases before the police, but every time I take legal steps with regards to the whereabouts of my wife, they deny to register my complaints. And together with the Advocacy Forum, we are planning to bring the case to the Supreme Court.
On April 29, 2005, Arjun Wama was abducted by unidentified people while he was attending the Parents' Day function at Sri Krishna Secondary School, Ketrabis, Kovur district. He was abducted because he refuses to join the Maoist party, and he was believed to be one of the agents of the monarchy or the king. I can't understand my feelings at that time. When I lost my husband, my youngest daughter was still at the 2nd grade in school. Since there was constant activities of the Maoist group in the village, we decided to leave and reside in Kathmandu.
When the Communist Party of Nepal Maoist waged a people's war against the monarchy and parliamentary system in 1996, at least 15,000 were reportedly killed, with 1,300 people disappeared. When a state of emergency was declared by the monarchy, the disappearances and killings increased. Nepal had the highest reported cases of enforced disappearances in 2002. During this period, family members were reportedly afraid of filing first information reports, because of possible retaliation. Those who tried to file were refused by the police.
We still don't know the whereabouts of more than 1,500 people who were disappeared during the armed insurgency in Nepal. Though the armed insurgency ended in 2006 with the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, and that Comprehensive Peace Agreement promised that within 60 days of the signing of that Comprehensive Peace Agreement, the whereabouts of those disappeared people will be made public. But still family members are waiting for that day to come. Family members, victims groups, human rights organizations have been advocating for the ratification of the conventions against enforced disappearances. They are also advocating for the national legislation. Nepal's Supreme Court has also ordered Nepalese government to enact legislation that would criminalize disappearances. Despite all this effort, government has not yet ratified the international conventions against disappearances, nor it has approved legislation to criminalize disappearances. As a result of which, family members are still, left in pain and in anguish and sufferings. So far, government has been providing monetary kind of interim relief to the family members of disappeared person, and it has also rolled out some scholarship program for the children of disappeared person. But these schemes were not really rolled out through proper process, not really involving victims groups in the whole designing of this interim relief. It hasn't really satisfied the needs and aspirations of the family members of the disappeared person.
After 3 years of the armed conflict, when police started a sort of plan operation, then they started to arrest, and people gone missing actually. So the train and the number, kept on increasing till the date that the army took over. So actually it happened in the context of the armed conflict. Basically the civilians, the sympathizer of the Maoist rebellion, who were actually living in the urban areas, number of teachers, number of students, and some of the journalists, actually those who are doing that, they were sympathizers, everybody knows that, but they were not taking arms. So these people were arrested and got disappeared. So that was the context.
On 5th of April 1999, my husband disappeared from Malbara, and to this day, we have still not found his remains. For our family, we feel we have lost a father, and a husband who loved us. We feel frustrated, and sometimes it is difficult to accept that this has happened. But in the end, we believe that in order for our nation to stand on its own 2 feet, it requires the contribution of all its people.
Timor-Leste suffered in the invasion of Indonesia from 1975 to 1999, wherein an estimate of 186,000 people were killed or disappeared by the Indonesian military. Reports of 4,500 children from ages 8 or 14 disappeared by the Indonesian military under a labor support operation known as Tanagabantuan Operasi. Most of the whereabouts of these children remain unknown to this day.
Now we have our independence. The issue of disappeared persons and disappearances in Timor-Leste has not yet arisen as a human rights problem. However, those cases which do exist today in Timor-Leste are cases which arose under the Indonesian military occupation. We all know that the war in Timor-Leste was long and involved an external power. The Indonesian military, exercising their power to commit human rights violations in Timor-Leste, including deliberate killings, torture, and especially, that the whereabouts of a large portion of the populace still remain unknown. The Cabinet of the President of the Republic has called attention to and given its support for all parties to cooperate with the state of Timor-Leste, the state of Indonesia, and also those states that were mentioned in the recommendations of CAVR, ensure that those persons still missing as a result of the war are identified and returned to Timor-Leste and to their families. It is true that in 2009, the Human Rights Ombudsman of Timor-Leste, with its partner organization, Komnas HAM Indonesia, signed a Memorandum of Understanding. The objective of signing this memorandum is to focus on areas where we can work together. Firstly, to work together on the issue of disappearances and disappeared person, and, secondly, to work together on building our human resource capacity. To link this to the issue of missing persons, I want to say that before this thinking appeared in the memorandum, we were talking about the issue of missing persons, and its inclusion came at the initiative of both the Human Rights Ombudsman and Komnas HAM Indonesia.
In 1975, when Indonesia invaded us, we escaped into jungle in Binamak. But eventually the Indonesian soldiers encircled us, and captured me and my children, but my husband escaped into the jungle. The soldiers transported us to the Bikara church, where we were kept under the control of the soldiers. In 1979, the soldiers managed to capture my husband, and brought him to the city. I was able to see him before the soldiers took him for sentencing in Santa Iho, Dili. A week later, the soldiers brought him back to me again. But the following week, the village chief of Santa Cruz summoned him again, and he never came back.
The last time I saw my elder brother was on 9th of June, 1980 at 6 p.m. We'd made these plans, and then separated from each other in Vila Verde, Dili. We returned back there to meet with his clandestine group in Vila Verde, but he wasn't with them.
From the Marcos dictatorship in the 70s, to the present administration of Benigno Aquino III, a total of 2,214 cases of enforced disappearances were reported. The highest number of enforced disappearance cases in the Philippines was caused by the martial law imposed by the Marcos regime, with 878 cases documented. Surprisingly, the disappearance continued onto the presidency of Corazon Aquino, with cases reaching as high as the Marcos years with 825. The numbers dropped down and rose yet again during Arroyo years, where 339 cases were reported.
I am Fernando Fortuna, 52 years old, living in Cubao, Quezon City. My son, Daryl, was studying in PUP. He was taking up AB history.
He went to Zambales
to help the anti-mining groups and the people in the community. He helped the farmers. That was his purpose of going there. March 9th, 8th in the evening, several residents in the community told us that there was a military operation to capture them.
March 9th, someone from FIND came to our house, informing us that Daryl was missing. We went to the house referred to us. We went directly to the house where Daryl was abducted. We wanted to talk to the owner of the house, but no one is inside there. Nobody in the house wanted to talk to us. Even the neighbors didn't want to talk to us, because they were also afraid. We actually know all the details, that the military abducted him.
We still have hope. We know he's still alive. I have that feeling. When Daryl was still young, in elementary and in high school, he was always the class president. When he went to PUP, then it happened. Of course, it was really painful to us. Any parents will understand. That's why I prayed. I know he is still alive. He's just somewhere. The only problem is those who abducted him. They might be afraid that cases will be filed against them. Until now, we still hope that he is alive.
In Indonesia, the earliest known cases of enforced disappearances can be traced back to 1965 during the turn of the regime from Sukarno to Suharto. However, due to the intense suppression at the time, the total number of cases remain vague and unreported. Throughout Indonesia's history, there were 4 major periods where disappearances happened. The first period was started from 1965 to 1970 during the period of the massacre of suspected members of the Indonesian Communist Party. The period of 1980 to 1989 marked the tragedy of Tanjung Priok and Talang Sari, and the discovery of dead bodies without any evidence for identifying the victims. In 1990 to 1989, the military operation in Aceh, called Domaceh, caused incidences of disappearance along with the pro-democracy victims during the 1997 to 1998 unrest. The Domaceh operations and the conflict situations in Oposo, Ambon, and Papua were the most recent period where disappearance was committed in Indonesia.
It has actually been a long practice, and forced disappearances has been practiced in Indonesia, and it happened even just after the independence. But we are working on disappearances in the context of the authoritarianism in Indonesia. That is the reason why we work and advocate the cases of enforced disappearances that happened during and after the massacre and disappearances of those accused communists in 1965 and 66. So that was actually the time when in the history of Indonesia enforced disappearances was practiced in the widespread and massive way. It became the policy of the government.
Dia itu adalah seorang periang, artinya.
He was good-humored. He had many friends since he was in senior high school. He had good and wide intercommunication and he was smart. His teachers confessed to this. He had many hobbies: singing, sports, playing music, traveling. He once became a guide in Bali. He was lively, never sits one's hands.
Why did he go to the people? It's because he wanted to be with the people until the last moment. He was asked to go, but he did not go. He stayed with the people. Why did he do that? It's because of his commitment. That is also why the people of Lipadi also cannot forget him.
Victims of disappearances in Sri Lanka can be traced from the uprisings that occurred in 1971 and 1989, with the crackdown against the Janatha Vimukthy Peramuna, otherwise known as the People's Liberation Front, or JVP. The war between the government and the Liberation Tamil Tigers of the Elam aggravated the human rights and peace situation in the country.
So I think the war has actually been the cause for lots of disappearances, but essentially the way that it was fought. A war by itself does not have to automatically cause disappearances. If the parties adhere to the rules of war, international humanitarian law, the number of people who have disappeared will have been reduced drastically. For example, if those who surrendered, there was a list and it was registered and there was international monitoring or independent local monitoring, those people would not be among the disappeared, rather they would be in the list of official arrests and in official detention facilities where the family members can go and visit them, lawyers can defend them, and so forth.
In May 2009, it was announced that even if you are one day involved with the LTTE, if you surrender, we will forgive you. With the help of Father Francis Joseph, I took my husband to surrender. I handed him over to the army. From that time when he surrendered, I don't know where he is, and what happened to him. I have a big burden on my head. I have the responsibility to search for my lost husband, to educate my children, and to protect myself.
The government must take its obligation seriously, that they must have a political will to address the issue of disappearances, to find out the truth of what has happened, and that they must also have a willingness to invest in mechanisms and institutions and laws that will result in the issue of disappearances being addressed properly.
In Thailand, the crackdown on pro-democracy student movement by the military junta in October 1976 caused the death and hundreds of disappearance without official accounted. And later, the military-backed-up government formed by military coup in February 1991 ordered the crackdown of peaceful demonstration, which was called for a democratization and democratic governance in May 1992. The brutal massacre between 17th to 21st of May 1992 claimed hundreds of lives and a large number of disappearances. Official records show there were 38 victims who were disappeared, but unofficial records claims a higher number. Afterwards, the Justice for Peace Foundation documented 40 cases of enforced disappearances. In South Thailand, the disappearances were related to the conflict situation and counterinsurgency programs of the government. In the north, the victims were associated with drug-related issues. Other cases that occurred within the country were related to assertion against corruption practices and upholding human rights. The government did not take an active role in searching for the disappeared and bringing truth and justice to the disappeared and their families.
Actually, my father is a human rights lawyer who worked for the poor client for 20 years of his working life. He started to interest for the southern cases because there are so many Muslims accused as insurgents in the southernmost of Thailand.
It was chaotic. From May 17th to 20th, people could not leave the area because the military blocked the demonstration area. Primarily, 44 people died. Those people were found, but many people disappeared. According to information from the Minister of Interior, more than 400 people disappeared. I follow up only 40 cases, out of about 400 cases. We don't have enough budget. The families of victims reported about 400 cases. Most of them are from provinces or students. Actually, many people disappeared, but we didn't follow up. I insist that even there's just one person, it means they accept that there is disappearance. That's enough.
In southern Thailand, under the state of emergency and government have the policy on counter-terrorism. So since 2004 until now, we got complaint from the people in South Thailand about their family's member that disappear or torture or arbitrary detention. Until now, we have more than 30 cases of people in South Thailand who were disappeared until 2004. Since 2004 until now, some of the victims used to be arrested under the martial law or the emergency decree law and was detained at the military camp, and after that they disappeared, and some of the victims were arrested maybe in the market or on the way back to their houses, but the police say that they have no evidence, so they cannot investigate.
Since 1947, when India got liberated from the British regime, India was divided into India and Pakistan, and Kashmir was one of the princely states which was given the decision to decide whether it wants to be part of Pakistan or part of India. But there was armed conflict, there was wars between India and Pakistan. Since 1947, India and Pakistan has fought 3 wars. They have become nuclear powers. There is militarization. In Kashmir, there was no resolution. Kashmir became an undecisive issue for which UN has also intervened. Then there were 18 UN resolutions. For what happened was that there were all kinds of human rights violations, massacres, rapes, there was arson, there was enforced disappearances, there was extrajudicial executions, torture is very widespread there. In last 23 years in Jammu and Kashmir, there has been more than 8,000 people who have disappeared in Jammu and Kashmir.
The disappearances in the Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir was occurring amidst the dismal human rights situation in the valley. More than 8,000 cases of enforced disappearances have been reported, wherein around 1,000 cases have been submitted by the Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons to the State Human Rights Commission and Jammu and Kashmir High Court. But so far no investigation has been conducted. Recently, 7,000 unmarked and mass graves were discovered. The APDP and other civil society groups have pushed for comprehensive forensic examination, including DNA testing of the remains in the unmarked graves, but the demand has been refused by the Jammu and Kashmir government, citing that they don't have enough capacity and resources to conduct investigation into all such graves. Furthermore, the government said that it has the potential of hurting local sentiments and might trigger serious law and order issues.
In these last 23 years, what has happened is that in the cases of disappearances, which are more than 8,000, the government has provided institutional support, institutional cover to the perpetrators of this injustice. The perpetrators have been promoted, they have been given rewards. India is amongst those very few countries in the world which has a reward system, a monetary reward system for extrajudicial killings. They encourage extrajudicial killings.
Meanwhile, in South Korea, an estimate of 3,835 South Korean citizens were reportedly abducted and taken to North Korea after the 1953 ceasefire. Within a year of their disappearance, most of the victims were sent back, with 517 victims remaining in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Among the cases that the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights campaigns for, is the incident where 51 passengers of a Korean Air flight from Gangneung was hijacked by a North Korean spy on December 11, 1969.
December 11th, 1969, 12:25 p.m. A Korean air flight left the city of Gangneung with 51 passengers. Within 10 minutes of takeoff, the plane was hijacked by a North Korean spy. The plane, originally bound from Gimpo, changed course near Daegwallyeong and landed at Sondok Airfield near Wonsan in South Hamgyong Province.
When the plane landed, they woke me up. Then, outside, we saw 20 to 30 North Korean soldiers with M1 carbines surrounding the airplane. There was no confusion, though. I remember the flight attendant telling us that we were probably in North Korea. There were some elderly people in the plane, and I saw them bursting into tears. They also took away our ID cards and began to cut them in half. I heard that on the New Year's Day of 1970, when there were no guards, my father started singing the song Gagopa. The lyrics were something like this: I want to go back. I want to go back to the South Ocean where my home is. Some of the other abductees were singing with him, and then North Korean soldiers came in and dragged my father outside. Someone who escaped from North Korea told me that after that day, the other abductees could not see my father. I was also told that the 11 victims who had not returned to South Korea were the ones who strongly rejected the North Korean regime and said they had to return home.
The act was widely condemned by South Korean citizens and the international community. During this time, the South Korean government sought the assistance of the International Committee of the Red Cross for negotiating the release of the 51 passengers. 66 days after the hijacking incident, the government of North Korea returned only 39 passengers. 11 victims remain in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
It is difficult for me even to try to remember that day. I was told that the people who were kidnapped were supposed to return. There was no phone in my house, so I went to some kind of intelligence agency in Gangneung with other families. They were announcing the names of returnees one by one, and I thought my husband would be one of them. The names were read one by one, but he was not there.
Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights raises the alarm for the immediate return of the 517 remaining abductees. In 2013, there were 322 victims out of the remaining 517 abductees, who reached their 70 years or more in North Korea. Some of the family members of the victims have already passed away, without the knowing the fate of their family members. In Bangladesh, the practice of disappearances is not a new phenomenon. During the Liberation War in 1971, various intellectuals have been disappeared without trace. After the war, disappearances have carried on to the post-liberation periods and across regimes. The highest number of suspected perpetrators was traced to the Rapid Action Battalion and the Police Detective Branch.
My name is Jasmine Akhtar. My father's name is Habibur Rahman Hayalada. My home is under Morganj Police Station in Baghat district. On the 6th of July 2011 at around 5 a.m. after morning prayers, my father went out beside our home with my mother. At that time, 2 men approached him, and he was grabbed by 2 other men who came out from the house of Abed Malik. My father asked them who they were, and they claimed that they were from the administration. When my mother tried to rescue him, she was pushed away. When my mother asked them why he was apprehended, they replied that there was a case against him, and he had to be taken to Morganj Police Station. Life doesn't stop. Shamim is not here, but his responsibility has to be fulfilled by someone. Taking my son to school, maintaining the family, and my job has to be done. We live in a rented flat and I have to work. I can say that I am alive. The day before my father was arrested, he was wearing this sarong cloth. I can still smell him. I believe that he is still alive. I brought it with me so that he is still close to me. I don't give it to anyone and expect that he will return.
I didn't know what to do. How will I take care of my children? Until now, we don't know if he is dead, or he is just missing. Sometimes my children ask if their father is dead. Maybe they would just think that their father is just working somewhere. This is still a big question for me and to my children.
After the incident, the impact cannot be seen in the first year, but years after that. The most affected is my mother. She often gets sick. I am not really satisfied with the response from the government.
As long as the victim remains disappeared, the suffering of the families also continues. The families are challenged to face economic hardships while continuously struggling against the psychological effects of the disappearance. Psychological support, livelihood assistance, educational support through scholarships, and legal assistance are among the needs of the families that must be recognized and provided by the state. Without information about the fate of the victims, the family's pain lingers. Every family is faced with the challenge to find strength to continue their efforts in uncovering the truth.
Case of my father is still be in the court, and there is no no progress and no effect by signing of the convention. After the signing of the convention by the government, we trying to lobby and following and monitoring them to do something with the law. So it's we trying to do a lot to encourage the government to for the at least the government should criminalizing the enforced disappearance in Thailand.
From victims to human rights defenders. This is what we want exactly to happen to the families of the disappeared. From being mere victims to protecting their own rights and to protecting other people's rights.
There is no useless pain. So although it is difficult, it is painful in the struggle because of the denial, ignorance of the government, but we will we will obtain justice.
Amidst the limited resources, there are still several efforts made by civil society groups to help the victims' families. In the Philippines, the families of victims of involuntary disappearances or find assists in the psychosocial services, livelihood, and educational assistance to the children of the disappeared.
The formation of the SAD, the Samahan ng mga Anak ng Desaparecidos, or the Children of the Disappeared, was one of the early attempts to address psychosocial rehabilitation needs of the families. And so, during the early years of FIND, we tried approaching it in a somehow theatrical way of things, forming the Children of the Disappeared or the Samahan ng mga Anak ng Desaparecidos and having them perform through theater arts, relive the lives of their missing kins, the fathers.
Ano kasi tatay ko bus driver ng G-Liner. Karoon sila ng parang mga rally-rally o boycott ba yun? Dahil sa nila, sa trabaho nila, napagbintangan or napagkamalan yung tatay ko na leader ng union ba. Ngayon, maraming dinukot na kasamahan niya din tapos patay na yung karamihan. So sa kanya, still missing. Talagang nawala, hindi na bumalik, ganyan. Ang kwento sa akin ng nanay ko noon, bali yung tatay ko, parang aalis kami, sasakay kami sa kanya. Ang sabi niya sa akin, babalikan kami ng tatay ko. Kumbaga parang puno yung bus, then hindi na nakabalik yung tatay ko hanggang sa nag-antay na lang kami. Nagtanong na, yun. Tapos ilang araw na siyang hindi umuwi, wala talagang balita. Sa kwento na yun, yung pumasok sa utak ko, kasi syempre di ba parang bata pa ako, hindi ko pa alam talaga. Tapos may nagkwento rin sa akin na nasa Saudi lang tatay ko, ganyan-ganyan, kaya alam ko nasa abroad lang. Hanggang sa tumatanda ako, nagkaka-age ako, doon ko na lang nalaman na wala talaga yung tatay ko. As in, nawawala. Nung nawala yung tatay ko, yung mga kuya ko parang naloko rin sa pag-aaral, ganyan. Tapos yun sa akin, yung parang lumalaki, parang may kulang. Parang alam mo yun, di ba? Lalo na sa school, may mga times na family day, ganyan. Tapos wala yung tatay ko. Tapos pag graduation, nung graduation ko, alam ko, inaanap ko yung tatay ko, parang wala naman talaga. Pero pakiramdam ko, buhay pa eh. Kami magkakapatid. Hoping kami na mas gusto nga namin na sana nasa kabilang bahay lang, ganyan, or ng babae, di ba? At least buhay siya na alam mong nandun. Pwede namin puntahan, pwede namin dalawin, or pwede kami dalawin ng tatay ko, di ba? Pero wala talaga eh. Gusto ko nga bago kay kasal, talagang darating yung tatay ko, parang naniniwala ko kahit ilang years, makikita ko pa siya. Yun. Mag-aantay ako. Mag-aantay ako talaga.
Bago nawala yung tatay ko, nasa tiyan pa ako ng nanay ko yun eh. Yung dati kasi bata ako, parang hindi pa ako nagtatanong na bakit wala akong tatay. Tapos parang na-realize ko yung high school na ako, parang ano nga nangyari sa tatay ko. Tapos yun na nakakwento sa akin ng lolo ko na dinukot daw siya. Tapos tinatanong ko na buhay na ba ako yun? Hindi pa daw ako. Buhay na sa tiyan ka pa ng nanay mo yun. Yung nawala yung tatay mo, alam mo ba, sabi niya napakasipag daw ng tatay mo. Kung di daw yun namatay, baka hindi ganito yung buhay ninyo. Ang sabi lang sa akin na naglalakad lang daw po siya nang dinukot daw na sinakay sa van. Naghahanap daw siya ng trabaho yun. Pero sa akin talaga napakahirap. Yung parang kahit hindi ko siya nakita, parang kulang. Yung ang hirap sa akin, nanay mo pa nag-abroad. Ayun, parang inaasar na ako sa school na bakit wala daw akong tatay.
Ano siya sabi?
Sabi ko, wala eh. Nawala. Yung parang tanong ko parang nawala. Saan nawala tayo mo? Hindi ko nga alam eh. Sabi daw dinukot eh. Tapos yung mga kaibigan ko parang nagtatawanan pa. Yung graduate ako ng 4th year, ako lang mag-isa. Nang college ako din mag-isa. Ako lang kumuha. Yung diploma ko, ako lang talaga graduate. Wala akong kasama college, pati ng high school, ako lang talaga mag-isa. Uwi ako, parang baliwala lang yung araw na yun. Parang pumasok ko lang ng high school na tapos yung gano'n na, tapos pahinga na uli. Yun lang. Mahirap na isipin na ganito yung ginawa sa tatay mo na napakabait na tao tapos gagantuin lang nila. Sana naisip nila na may naiwan na anak may naiwan na asawa. Sana hindi nila ginawa yun kasi napakasakit para sa akin na kulang sa pamilya. Parang ganun. Parang napakahirap talaga eh.
Nepal, through the Center for Mental Health and Counseling, assists families of victims during the war period in handling trauma. Families are encouraged to express their feelings, search for the meaning in the disappearances, and also participate in rituals to offer their farewells when the victim is found dead. In Thailand, there is no reparation program that will address the needs of the families, such as psychosocial support, but through consistent efforts, the Justice for Peace Foundation in Thailand initiated rehabilitation trainings, investigation, and advocacy on enforced disappearances. Indonesian organizations also offer psychosocial support to victims of human rights violations. IKOI, or the Association of the Families of the Disappeared, works on community-based psychosocial assistance.
We do international work in order to provide the boomerang effect to us, meaning that our objective and also the target is a change of policy in the national level. But to do that, sometimes we have to throw our boomerang abroad to the international community so that there will be feedback from the international community. We have to realize that this struggle is a long struggle.
The Philippine government enacted the first anti-enforced disappearance law in Asia. It was approved and signed by the President on the 21st of December 2012. It is called the Anti-Enforced Disappearance Act of 2012. Its implementing rules and regulations were promulgated on the 12th of February 2013. So it's now in the process of being implemented. It is also an important instrument to ensure prevention, and it can guarantee non-repetition, and taking into consideration the 16 years of efforts of lobbying and campaigning for the law by families of the disappeared and civil society organizations in the country. It is a moral victory on the part of the families and the whole human rights community in the country. The Philippine experience is very important in terms of giving inspiration to governments of other countries of Asia in doing the same. This is especially true because Asia is a continent that submitted to the UN Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances the highest number of cases of enforced disappearances. Therefore, domestic laws that criminalize enforced disappearance are very important instrument in the combat against impunity and in the prevention of the crime of enforced disappearance. This international instrument is a product of 30 years of struggle of Latin American organizations, when in 1981 it was considered as their project when they formed their federation called the FEDIFAM, or the Latin American Federation of Associations of Relatives of Disappeared Detainees. So it is a moral victory for them and a political victory for them that after 30 years, the international community, the United Nations, have recognized this as a global phenomenon that necessitates a global response.
I think there is no other choice but for the government, Indonesian government or any other government to fulfill this obligation to protect the people's right, to fulfill the rights of the victim to truth, justice, and reparation.
For the families of the disappeared, I want to say that the struggle is long and the enemies, the perpetrators, are in power. So it's very important for the families of the disappeared to be themselves empowered. It is very important for them to unite, because in the strength of solidarity, they overcome many difficulties and it's important for them to knock doors of government agencies, to continue struggling. There are small victories and there are also grand victories, like for example the convention itself is a big victory for families of the disappeared all over the world.
The message is, keep the spirit. We keep the spirit, because we have learned from other families, who are still waiting, until they get old. The disappeared people are our people. We have other people that have ways to find them than others. So we have to fight. This is the only way to defend, and seek justice for the victims. The government may seem powerful, but we should not stop. To find justice, we must work hard.